Joining us live in the newsroom is our Roundup panel led by Fox 26 legal analyst Chris Tritico. Good morning again, Chris.
Good morning.
Well, you asked the mayor directly about this week during a breakfast that you all held where she spoke, and she conceded then that the subpoenas were too broad. Do you think that they're still necessary even now as they're being modified?
Well, yes. Let's talk about what's going on here. The city was sued by these same pastors over the petition process, saying that they wrongfully threw those petitions out. So the city's lawyers, which is not the city attorney's office, it's an independent law firm, issued subpoenas in what we call the discovery process to determine facts and circumstances in preparation for trial or depositions. And so the city has every right to do that. There's a few facts here that I think are very important. I don't think the mayor knew anything about it. I've been practicing law for almost 26 years. I have never once run a subpoena by my client before I issued that subpoena and served it. And so I doubt very seriously the mayor ever saw it. Two, these sermons had already been given. And so once they're given in public, I don't know that there's really any First Amendment violation on the religious protections that the First Amendment gives these people. So there's a lot here to look at. And let me join, God, dang it, I can't talk today. Joined as always by my co-host here, Jackie Bally and Mustafa Tamiz. You know, Jackie, this Jared Woodfill, who's the plaintiff's lawyer, saw this as an opportunity, complained about it. The conservative talk radio all over the country picked it up. Good day for Jared. I don't know that it was necessarily the First Amendment violation that he claimed.
It's not really just Jared and the conservatives. This is the first time in a long time I've seen people just all across the aisle, Democrats, Republicans, really worked up. Because this is a perfect instance in where perception is reality, even if it's not reality. The legal facts will be straightened and ironed out eventually, and we'll know exactly what's going on. But the perception is the mayor is having an issue, or the mayor and these pastors and men of cloth have a disagreement, and now she's taking their sermons. That is the perception. She wants to look at their sermons. For many years, you've seen people, politicians go into churches. That's the way it's been in Fort Bend. If you're running for office, you go into the mosque, you go into the temple. This has been going on for many, many years. Now, all of a sudden, because there's a lawsuit or if there's a disagreement about a certain ordinance, you're seeing their sermons being taken up. And so the perception is that they are not allowed to speak freely. They're now allowed to exercise their religion. And that's the perception. If it's legal or not, we'll find out, but the general public, not just conservatives, are very upset about this.
And what about that? It did go all over the country that the mayor of the city of Houston was trying to invade these churches, and I'm paraphrasing comments from all over the country. Do you think the mayor had a right to do this? The city, not the mayor. We got to separate this. The city.
When the perception is being created by political operatives. So it's not an organic, perception. The perception, Jared Woodfill is a good lawyer. He appears on the show as a good friend, but he's a far better political organizer, and he's basically turned this into an issue when there wasn't any. This is a manufactured issue. This was a lawsuit that his group and he had brought to the city. The city's trying to defend itself in that litigation, and part of defending itself in litigation is to see what instructions were passed to people that were signing these petitions, and this was a broad subpoena.
But does that mean the city has a right to invade the thoughts of these ministers when he's talking to his congregation?
Well, the city is not invading their rights. The city is basically saying, if you had these petitions and you're saying X, Y, Z is true, then we need to see the communication that you are referring to, and part of that are sermons.
It seems to me, Jackie, that if the ministers from the pulpit are talking about signing these petitions, the city has a right to know that.
But the ministers, again, the ministers and men of cloth, just around Texas, I don't know about other states, but definitely in Houston, have always been involved in politics. So this is the first time that we're seeing, that I know of, that their speeches, their sermons are now being taken away from them. And that's the real issue. It's not something manufactured by Jared. Again, this is something, again, if you're conservative or not. You see, in fact, I'm seeing more non-conservatives. Lots of these men of the cloth are black men and Hispanic men who are not labeled as conservatives. They're Democrats.
Let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
Look at Twitter, everybody. First, we have a tweet coming in from LC Matthews. He says, if Houston's Mayor Parker isn't out to get Houston pastors, why subpoena their, quote, speeches? Sean says, nothing changed except the word sermon being removed. They still want to see what was said in church. That should be private. Mayor Parker responding this week that the city just refiled subpoenas. She clarified the intent. No mention of sermons. This is all about petition process instructions, adding she never intended to interfere with pastors and their sermons or intrude on religion. She says that this is a discovery motion that is clearly focused on petitions.
And, you know, and I think all of that falls back into line of what I was saying. Once the pastor has, or the minister has said this in public, it's not protected by the First Amendment anymore. A lot of these ministers, and I don't know how many of them, do their sermons over the airwaves. And so there's really no First Amendment issue anymore.
The thing that's getting lost in this is that the city is defending itself from a lawsuit that's been created by this group to the city. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about frivolous lawsuit. They filed this lawsuit against the city. The city's trying to defend itself, and in their discoveries wants to know exactly how it's done. And this only affects 5 pastors. So this is made out to be something that's, you know, a global issue. It's by the people that are organizing for the petition.
Few seconds left.
Yeah, and we need to remember that they said that they had the necessary number of signatures to begin with, and that it was thrown out by the city. So it's not a frivolous lawsuit. They felt that their rights were impeded back then. That's why they filed the lawsuit.
We got to leave it right there. You know, the issue in this is, as Jackie said, this is about whether or not these petitions were wrongfully thrown out. And so the main issue with this subpoena is whatever the pastor said in his sermon doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not the city wrongfully threw out those petitions. That's the main issue for the judge to decide later.